This billionaire thought he'd seen everything, until a black waitress knelt beside his disabled son and asked him to dance. While the rich ignored the boy in the wheelchair, she made him feel like the star of the room. What happened next? Not only shocked the entire gala, it changed the billionaire's life forever. If you love stories where the underestimated rise and justice hits hard, don't just watch, join the VIP fam. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because here, we don't just tell stories. We drop moments that change everything. The music was soft, like a heartbeat trying not to be heard. Slow jazz flowed through the speakers, wrapping itself around the marble pillars and chandelier light of the grand ballroom. It was the kind of place where diamonds sparkled, smiles were rehearsed, and every conversation was just another performance. But in the corner, unnoticed by most, sat a little boy. Ryan Grant, 9 years old, curly hair neatly brushed, suit perfectly, tailored, and yet he was shrinking into the seat of his wheelchair like he didn't belong. His hands were folded tight in his lap, his eyes distant. Not because he didn't understand the room, but because the room didn't understand him. He was born with cerebral palsy, a condition that made movement difficult and speaking harder. It didn't stop his mind from racing or his heart from feeling. But to the people around him, he was just quiet, still, fragile. The laughter around him echoed loud. Glasses clinked. Expensive shoes clicked across the floor. Businessmen talked numbers. Women talked fashion. No one saw the child sitting quietly by the wall. No one thought to include him. No one. Except one. Leonard Grant, his father, stood across the room. A billionaire. A genius. A man known for changing the world with a single product launch. But tonight, his eyes kept drifting to his son, and with every glance, guilt tightened its grip on him. He had built a billion-dollar company, but couldn't build a moment where his son felt like he mattered. He looked at Ryan the way a man looks at a puzzle he's been trying to solve for years. And then she walked in. Not through the front doors, not in a gown or heels. She came from the kitchen, carrying a tray of drinks and moving with quiet grace. Jasmine, a young waitress with deep brown skin, warm eyes, and a presence that somehow softened the air around her. She wasn't supposed to stand out, but to Ryan, she shined. While the others walked past him without a glance, Jasmine slowed down, then stopped, and then she knelt. Right there on the ballroom floor, she knelt beside his chair, not out of pity, not because someone told her to, but because she saw a child who deserved more than silence. "Hey, superstar," she said with a soft smile, balancing her tray like it was nothing. "You like music?" Ryan blinked. His body stiffened a little, unsure if he was being mocked. But Jasmine's smile stayed kind, warm, real. He gave the tiniest nod. Jasmine's grin widened just a bit. "Me too," she said. "Want to help me lead a dance step?" Ryan's eyes widened. He couldn't speak well, and his limbs didn't move the way others did. But Jasmine didn't seem to care. She didn't treat him like he was broken. She placed her tray down carefully, then took his small hand in both of hers. Slowly, gently, she began to sway, guiding his arm, but letting him feel like he was leading. And just like that, a child who had spent his life being overlooked became the center of something beautiful. His face lit up. A smile cracked across his lips. Then, out of nowhere, a laugh escaped his mouth. Not a quiet one. A full, joyful, soul-deep laugh that filled the room. Leonard froze. That sound. He hadn't heard it in years, not from his boardroom, not from his bank account, not from anything he'd built, but from her, this waitress, this stranger, who didn't just serve drinks, she served dignity. She gave his son something money couldn't buy. She gave him a moment where he felt seen. Jasmine balanced a silver tray of champagne flutes in one hand, with the kind of grace only someone who's done it 1,000 times can manage. But even with the clinking glasses and swirling crowds, her focus was elsewhere. She'd seen the EI boy The one in the wheelchair, the one no one else saw. Ryan. Most servers walked by him like he was part of the furniture, just another obstacle to avoid. But Jasmine didn't see a chair. She saw a child. A little boy who deserved more than silence, and she didn't care who his father was. Didn't care that he could probably buy the whole hotel if he wanted. To her, Ryan wasn't just the billionaire's son. He was a kid who looked like he hadn't been spoken to kindly all night. As the DJ shifted the vibe and slow R&B spilled softly into the air, Jasmine's eyes lit up. She looked back at Ryan, leaned in a little closer, and smiled like she was sharing a secret. "Want to help me lead a dance move?" she whispered. It was playful, gentle, like a code between friends. Ryan's eyes widened. His breathing quickened. No one had ever asked him that. Adults talked around him, at him, never with him. His mouth opened slightly, trying to speak. A sound came out, unsure, somewhere between fear and surprise. But Jasmine didn't rush him. She simply nodded, letting him know it was okay. "Don't worry," she said softly, eyes steady on his. "I've got you." In one fluid motion, she set her tray down, right there in the middle of the ballroom, and then she knelt. She knelt beside his wheelchair, not to draw attention, not to perform, but to connect. She gently reached for his hand, resting her own lightly against his. His fingers twitched. A reflex? A response? Jasmine didn't flinch. She smiled deeper. "We're gonna move nice and slow," she whispered. And then she did something incredible. She moved with him, one step, one sway, letting his small hand guide hers. If he tilted, she followed. If he paused, she waited. She wasn't leading him. She was letting him lead. She gave him control in a world that rarely offered him any. At first, it was just the two of them. But slowly, the energy shifted. People started to notice. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Waitstaff slowed their steps. Even the guests, those polished people in sleek tuxedos and glittering gowns, couldn't help but stare, because something real was happening. In a room full of powerful people, the most powerful moment was being shared between a child and a waitress. Dancing. Leonard, Ryan's father, stood frozen across the room. For a split second, his instincts kicked in. Is this appropriate? Should I stop this? But something deeper held him back. Something raw, something he hadn't felt in years. Wonder. He saw his son's face change. His lips curved up, his eyes shone brighter. And then it happened. A sound. A laugh. Light, pure, joyful. A laugh that broke through the marble and gold of that stiff, sterile ballroom. It hit Leonard like a wave. He hadn't heard his son laugh like that since before the diagnosis. Since before the hospital visits. Since his wife, Ryan's mother, passed away. It was a sound that made time stop, and all of it came from her. Jasmine. The woman no one noticed. The woman everyone walked past. And now, she was the only one in the room that mattered, because she didn't just lift Ryan's hand. She lifted his spirit. She didn't just help him dance. She helped him believe he could. Jasmine didn't care about the gasps. She didn't flinch at the curious stares or the whispered judgments of the elite. As the room began to quiet, she kept moving, slowly, gently, her hands cradling Ryan's like they were guiding the entire rhythm of the night. To everyone else, it might have looked like nothing, just a waitress dancing with a boy in a chair. But to Ryan, it was everything. No one had ever made him feel like he belonged in a place like this. He was usually a shadow in the corner, present but ignored. Dressed up but never invited. But right now, with Jasmine swaying beside him, he was dancing. Not with his feet, maybe, but with his heart. Jasmine hummed softly to the beat, letting the R&B song sink into their bones. The music wasn't loud, but it pulsed enough to carry them. She adjusted her rhythm with Ryan's movements. Always careful, always patient. It was almost like she wasn't leading at all, just following the quiet signals he gave through his fingertips. And then it happened. Ryan smiled, not a small, polite smile. A real one, wide, bright, pure. His eyes crinkled at the corners, his cheeks lifted. And in that smile was something Leonard hadn't seen in far too long: joy. And then, a laugh, not a chuckle, not a forced giggle, a loud, clear, unfiltered laugh that rose from deep inside his chest and echoed across the ballroom. The music kept playing, but the room froze. Servers paused in their steps. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the clinking of champagne glasses seemed to fade. Dozens of heads turned. Some people looked confused, others stunned. But they all saw it now. They saw the boy in the wheelchair. They saw his light. They saw what Jasmine saw from the beginning. For the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't invisible. He was the center of the room, the heart of it, up. Above, the chandelier glimmered like stars had come down to witness the moment. And beneath it, a child who had been overlooked and underestimated was shining. Leonard stood across the room, frozen. His phone was still in his hand, but forgotten now. His fingers trembled slightly. He swallowed hard, but the lump in his throat didn't move. His heart twisted, because that laugh was a sound he hadn't heard in years, not since before the doctors, before the therapists, before the long, lonely nights when his son wouldn't speak or smile or meet his eyes, before his wife died. Since her passing, Leonard had poured everything into his work. It was easier than feeling, easier than grieving. He told himself he was building a future for Ryan. That money would fix what was broken. That one day, he'd find the right solution. But no dollar, no deal, no therapy had brought out that sound, that joy. It took one moment, one person. A waitress, young, black, overlooked by the very people now staring in awe, who dared to see his son not as a diagnosis, not as a billionaire's child, but as a boy who wanted to dance. Leonard's eyes stung. He blinked hard. He wasn't a man prone to tears. In fact, he'd taught himself not to cry, not in business, not in grief, not even in private. But now he couldn't stop them from forming. He watched as Jasmine whispered something to Ryan, something only the two of them heard, and his son nodded, glowing with pride. The kind of pride no money could ever buy. And Leonard knew deep down he would never see the world the same way again, because in a room full of people chasing status, wealth, and recognition, it was a black waitress who reminded him what humanity truly looked like. She didn't just change his night, she changed his life. As the music slowed to a stop, Jasmine gently let go of Ryan's hand and patted his shoulder. "You're a great dancer, you know that," she whispered. Ryan beamed. His face was still flushed from the joy, and his smile hadn't faded for a second. It wasn't just happiness, it was pride, confidence. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a kid with cerebral palsy, not as someone to be pitied, but as a person who mattered. As Jasmine turned to leave, slipping back into the sea of servers with her tray, a voice cut through the soft hum of the room. "Excuse me," Leonard said. His voice cracked just slightly. Emotion caught in his throat. Jasmine paused and turned, unsure of what to expect. There he was, Leonard Grant, billionaire tech mogul, towering in his black suit, but with eyes that now looked different, softer, humbled. "What's your name?" he asked. She straightened. "Jasmine Carter, sir." Leonard looked at her like he was trying to memorize every detail of her face. You made him feel seen," he said slowly. "Do you know how rare that is?" Jasmine's smile was gentle. She nodded, but not out of pride. Just quiet understanding. "I used to work at a children's center," she said. "Kids like Ryan, they don't want to feel special. They just want to feel normal, even if it's just for one song." Her words hit harder than any investor pitch Leonard had ever heard. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and transformed industries. But somehow, this young woman, with no boardroom or PowerPoint, had done what he never could. She reached his son's heart. Leonard stood there, speechless for a moment, the weight of her words settling into the silence between them. Then he slowly reached into the inner pocket of his tailored jacket and pulled out a sleek, matte black business card. His name gleamed in silver letters at the center. He held it out. Jasmine, I want you on my team. Not as a server, not in the background. I'm starting something new, a foundation for children with disabilities. Real resources, real support. But more than anything, we need heart. We need people like you. Jasmine blinked. She looked down at the card, then up at him, unsure if this was real. Her hands shook slightly. You're serious? She asked. Leonard smiled, not the kind he gave at photo ops or business dinners. This was genuine, serious as a heart attack. Behind him, Ryan was still smiling, still glowing, and Jasmine looked back at the boy who had just led a dance in a room full of people who'd never expected it. She looked at Leonard, this man who once buried his emotions under mountains of emails and stock updates, now standing before her vulnerable, asking for help, asking for heart, and in that moment she realized this wasn't just a job offer, this was purpose. She took the card, her fingers still trembling. Okay, she said. Let's build something beautiful. The crowd began to move again, the noise returning, but the room had changed. Something sacred had happened in that ballroom. Not just a dance, but a spark, the beginning of something bigger. One child felt seen, one father found his heart again, and one black waitress changed 3 lives, his, Ryan's, and her own. Not through power, not through wealth, through kindness, through presence, through one dance, and that more than anything money could buy was the real miracle that night. No one expected a moment like that to last. But the world had other plans. A guest at the gala had recorded the entire dance, Jasmine gently guiding Ryan, his smile blooming, his laughter filling the grand ballroom. They uploaded it to social media with a simple caption. A waitress let a disabled boy lead a dance, and he lit up the room. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire. To million views in just 3 days, people across the globe were moved. Some cried. Some applauded. Many shared their own stories of being overlooked or finally being seen. News outlets picked it up. Morning talk shows discussed it. Advocates for disability rights called it the moment that reminded us what true inclusion looks like. But what made the biggest impact wasn't just the viral video, it was what happened next. Leonard Grant kept his promise. The billionaire who once measured success in shares and stock values now had a new mission, the Ryan Initiative. He named it after his son. But it was built on the spirit of that night, of seeing kids like Ryan not as broken, but as brilliant. The foundation started small but powerful. Therapy programs, art and music workshops, and mentorship opportunities, all geared toward children with disabilities, especially in underserved communities where resources were scarce, and at the heart of it all was Jasmine. Yes, the same waitress who once served cocktails and guided a child through a dance. Leonard didn't just hire her, he empowered her. She became the face of the initiative. She led staff training, spoke at fundraisers, visited schools, and connected directly with families. She helped design inclusive programs rooted in dignity, not pity. She made sure no child ever felt like Ryan did that night, alone in a room full of people. All it takes, she told a crowd once, standing under bright lights and holding a mic with grace, is one person to see a child differently, to treat them like they matter. One person to dance with them when no one else will. Her words landed like thunder. Soon, schools began replicating the Ryan Initiative model. Hospitals reached out for partnerships. Volunteers signed up by the hundreds. And everywhere Jasmine went, people didn't just see a leader, they saw a movement. And what about Ryan? Well, he thrived. His health improved. His therapy sessions became more joyful, more active. He began drawing, painting, even trying music. But most importantly, his smile became a regular thing. His confidence bloomed. He made friends. He spoke up in class. His teachers said he lit up the room now, just like he did that night with Jasmine. And Leonard, he transformed. Not just as a businessman, but as a father. The man who once checked his emails at galas now left his phone in the car during father-son days. He built Lego castles, learned how to cook grilled cheese just the way Ryan liked it. He laughed more, hugged more, listened more. He was no longer just a financier. He was dad, and he often said, "I had all the money in the world, but it took one act of kindness from a stranger to show me what my son really needed." That moment, a dance, a smile, a laugh, had sparked something far bigger than any of them imagined. Not just a viral moment, not just good PRA legacy, because now thousands of kids like Ryan were being reached, seen, supported, celebrated. And hundreds of caregivers, teachers, and everyday people were being trained to lead with empathy, not assumption. And Jasmine? She became more than the face of a foundation. She became a symbol of what happens when we stop looking through people and start looking at them. She never forgot her roots, never stopped thanking Leonard for the opportunity. But every time someone praised her, she just smiled and said, "It wasn't about me. It was about Ryan. He led the dance. I just followed." And in a way, we all did. Because in a world that's often too busy, too loud, too distracted to notice those sitting quietly in corners, one woman knelt down, one boy smiled, one father changed, and all because of a single dance. That's the power of being seen. That's the power of choosing kindness, and that's the power of Jasmine, Ryan, and a room that finally paid attention.